Well, so thank you for choosing this talk and for being here. There might be many reasons why you're here. Perhaps you haven't done any testing in Python that required files, so you're curious. Or maybe you have done it many times but never really liked what you did because it was too verbose or intrusive. Every time I had to deal with testing files, I had to invent things, reinvent things, recall things from past, and each time, before diving into a rabbit hole of writing many lines of code or producing another collection of files stored somewhere, I checked for available solutions that could simplify things for me, make it easier, less intrusive, less work. I wanted to make it just fine and enjoyable to work with. As of today, I have found a solution that works well for me, and that's what I want to share with you. You may ask why. Because test files are often not available when you need them. At least not at the right time for the testing, because your customer or partner does not yet have them. And even if they do have the right files, there are dozens of reasons for never-ending delays, most of which are related to privacy regulations, such as NDAs to be signed, data anonymization, and so on. And yet there are deadlines. You have to come up with something every time for each project that you work on, for every file format that you're supposed to support. Or maybe you have a few files and you decide to test your pipeline with hundreds that you have, and if you're lucky to have that much, and it all works, then you go live and discover that your system does not perform well enough to handle thousands of them. But what are files really? Are they not just pieces of text and images? Sometimes tables, audios, videos, spreadsheets, presentations, all mostly originated from text. We can generate text. Nowadays we have concepts such as synthetic data and libraries like Faker to support them. And if you have never heard of Faker or term synthetic data, I'll make a quick recap for you. Synthetic data is computer-generated data that is similar to real-world data. Its primary purpose is to increase the privacy and integrity of systems. As everything else in life, it has cons, pros, and alternatives. The pros are its privacy. Because it's fake, there's no risk of exposing sensitive user data, and no need to comply with privacy regulations. Scalability. You can generate as much data as you want. And control. You have full control over data that you generate, and you can test out specific rare edge cases. The concerns are the realism. Because it's fake, it does not always accurately represent a real data and contain real patterns. That could lead to less accurate testing. Its generation complexity. It's challenging to create realistic data, and depending on the domain. And the maintenance, naturally, as everything else, it needs to be maintained. You need to maintain the logic. Now, the alternatives are the production data anonymization. It's when you take a live data or a subset of it and anonymize it, remove and obfuscate sensitive information. You could create manually data. It's usually done for a smallest case. And you could augment data. It's when you just slightly alter data. And Python Faker is a Python package for generating synthetic data. It knows many patterns and locales. It can generate names, text, addresses, zip codes, ISBN numbers, and a lot more. I started to use Faker in 2016. It was such a relief. I could just easily do things like this. And before Faker, when I was developing other websites, I used lorem ipsum, which was okay, but it didn't make much sense. Then Faker and Faker-like libraries for creating fake data emerged to save us. But then test cases became more complex. Primary data sources were often files. We needed to test data pipelines. Faker still helped a lot, but it was inconvenient to replicate your previous best approach for files and reinvent the wheel for each new project. That's why Faker file was created. I wrote it mainly for myself, but you might find it useful too. How does Faker file solve the problem? In essence, Faker file is just a set of providers for the famous Faker library. You can use it with Faker and Factory Boy for ORM integration to use dynamic fixtures. It works well with Django. It supports remote storages such as AWS S3, Google Cloud Storage, Azure Cloud Storage, and you are in full control of the generated content. By default, for most base cases, content is generated using Faker's text method, but you could easily tweak that usage in a content argument. You could run it. You could use it to run a comprehensive test of your pipeline in your favorite cloud. Some of the most commonly used formats are supported. And it usually starts with pip install Faker file. And for the next slide, I'll open my Jupyter notebook. No. Sorry. I thought it's not okay. Copy link. Let's paste it here. To present it like this. So yeah, just to illustrate how it works, and just a moment, I need to open this so that you can also see things. Yeah. Something like this. Yeah, something like this. So let's run this. It's basically like this. You just import Faker. You add this provider, which is docx file provider. You just import what you need, and using this statement, you create a docx file. And here it's created. You can open it. And this is your random text. Let's go forward. And by the way, this is how you. So when you generate a file, it's an object that's a string-like value, but it has some handy subsets, handy metadata. So, for instance, to get the file name, the full file name, you do it like this, and the text content is here. So, for instance, if you need to write a integration test for instance, you want to ingest some document in your system and check if it's properly indexed in Elasticsearch after being processed. So you just compare what the initial data is and if it's searchable enough with your terms. And let's create more files. So similarly, as I said, you have full control of what you generate. So if you just want some specific text, this is how you pass it. You just say context text and your file is created, and this is another docx file. Somewhere here. This is your text. Let's create more files. Yeah, images also supported. It's especially useful for OCR pipelines when you need to not only process documents but also various rare formats. And PDFs, they're everywhere. And this is your PDF. Also some long text. And you can also generate documents from predefined templates. This is the interesting part. So if you just don't need your text to be very random, but you should follow certain patterns, this is how you do it. You just define a template. And these are all the tags that you can use in Faker, so standard Faker providers. And you just provide the content as this. And there are some handy things. So if you want for instance, want to wrap characters as at 80 symbols. This is how we do it, and voila, your PDF is created, and it's it is of this format. Let's move forward. Yeah, zip files. Zip files are supported, and archives in general are supported too. So it's at the moment there it's tar, zip, and emails, because emails is one of the formats I'm often working with. At the company where we work, we just analyze just a lot of data sources, and some of them in the recent projects, it was for lawyers. One of the original data sources also emails that contained another documents, and we needed to analyze all of it in order to build some timeline for them. And this is why we support archives. It's very easy to generate archives too. Let's yeah, and unlike the other providers, so here, because there is no direct content, because archives contain other files, but you could go recursively. So in inner, it's just it's a dictionary of all the files generated. And well, let's see this archive. I think it's this one. No, it's probably the top. So yeah, 5 files generated with random text, because it didn't provide any arguments, but we can tweak that. So in this case, we create a zip file with 3 docx files in it, and for that you need to use concept of inner helpers. So basically, all the file formats that are supported by this library, they also have correspondent inner function, and inner functions are were created to support archives. So if you need to generate, for instance, zip with docx files, this is how you do it. This is number files to be generated, the correspondent inner function, and the arguments. For instance, if we want to create archive with 3 files according to that template that I showed, this is how we do it. So if you run it, they are created, and let's see, probably, is this a zip? So yeah. You see, I gave some things here. So the files inside archive should be prefixed with XXX, and the directory, it should be this. So, and if we open it, so all the files are created according to our template. Let's go forward. Yeah, and of course, inner zip file is also this so-called inner function. You could also create nested archives. So for instance, if you want to test your system from zip bomb perspective, you could create the archives with the level that you tolerate, and whatever is above that will be should be dropped at your site. And well, it looks a bit complex, but you know, imagine you doing it yourself. And this is just simply generated, let's see, just to show, where is it nested? Yeah, so again, it's following some patterns. The prefix of the top file should be nested level, and then when we go in, all they're prefixed like this. And if we open one, you see another archive, and here we have the files that you open. Again, according to our system, to a template plus some random string. Let's move forward. Oh yeah, and if you want to create a zip archive with variety of the documents in it, am I in the right place? Yeah, I think it's jumped. Okay. So I think I just generated email file. Yes. So that was some test of the email file. Again, it's according to our template, and well, you have 3 attachments here. And okay, and if you want to test it, if you want to an archive with, let's say, random files generated, like from a given preselection. So, for instance, here I instructed to generate docx, epub, and text files. There's this fuzzy choice create in the file helper function, which accepts some parameters, and when you run it, this is the biggest archive generated. And no, sorry, it was the wrong file. Was it this one? No. This one? Oh yeah, so this is the, I'm not gonna open any of them, but you get the idea. And here is, if you want to achieve a similar thing, so you can give it more structure. So without randomization, you just say, okay, all of these things should be created. And for instance, if your use case is that your system receives, your API receives some file name and then later on you need to go grab some storage to pick that file from there, and then to parse it, for example, if it's XML, and you want to, and it contains some information about files just from there. Well, this is you could create a test according to that, which will do that. And if we run it, well, I think it was this one. So we just have 3 files according to what we've specified. So the exact file names also it's possible to give, or random if you need. Oh yeah, so this is one of the typical use cases. So if you don't need the files to be stored on your system, there is this raw is true argument, and in that case you get just bytes back. And these bytes you can feed to your API as a payload to test your system. So if you need, if your system is built to accept docs or PDFs that you need to process and run through your pipeline to extract data and to do something else with it, this is how we could do it. This is a typical case for use case for Django. This will not run, but it just passes. For the moment, I'll just delete all the files, otherwise. Yep, much better. And you can also create files from predefined templates, like any files, even if it's not yet supported, the provider. And this is, for instance, how you could generate HTML. There is this specific generic file provider. And if we run it, it will create just HTML file, and we can open it. And this is just HTML. Okay, if I press F4, yeah, you'll see that it is. And let's move forward. Oh yeah, as I said, it supports Django as well. But so Django is one of the systems, one of the rare systems that do support files natively. And it supports them according to their own standards. So for instance, if your file is part of your Django model, if it's saved anywhere outside of the media root, you'll get a suspicious operation, either on read or write. And in order to work with Django, there is this, and not only that, but so there's this storages concept. So you just provide your storage, and as a root path, you give your media root. And that you can feed to your Django, to your factories or whatever. And then your file will be generated inside. So this is my Django example, the project media. It will be generated inside your media root, so that you could use it the way you want. And it also works with, as mentioned, AWS or Google Drive or Azure. Let's see. So it found something and it's written something. And this is the location of the file in my history. And you can also augment things. So the data augmentation doesn't work really fast. It's heavy AI and NLP, and it's the moment it's basic. But if you have like a few files, let's say 10 or I don't know whatever, you could store them somewhere and then use file to augment these existing files to create new files. So if you have some legal documents and you want to test, and you don't have many of them, but you still want to test your system with sort-like legal documents, you could use this this one. 3 minutes. Okay, I'll move quick. Let's see. CLI. It's also like all options available, also available in CLI. Let's see. This is how you kind of install it. You generate the completions for completion, and then you can generate, for instance, from your command line, you can generate an MP3, or if you want, you can generate like lots of documents. And that's it for this one, but still want to say some things. Is this my slides? So yeah, that was a part of a demo. Oh, great. So without fake file, there are alternatives. You could simply store a collection of files somewhere. If you do, make sure to document your collection, because otherwise it becomes unmanageable pretty soon. Then the natural question arises, like where to store? Should it be centrally hosted or per repository? There are drawbacks everywhere. If you do store files, just consider storing them in GitLFS. Additionally, if your test cases are too specific, you could use a mixed approach. When you for some files you just use generated content, and for some very specific cases you just use the files that you used to use. And so most likely a combination of Faker, Factory Boy, and Fakerfile will do this fine for your MVP and even way beyond that. You have all-in-one synthetic data created, dynamic fixtures, and generation of files. This approach saves you from thinking about where to store your test data, and overall makes your code more manageable and simplifies the development process. If you need to test files in your project, think up front about the details, such as amount of test files you need, where to store them, how to store them, and in some of your cases, you could consider the mixed approach. There are some links to documentation, repository, REST API demo, and UI demo, and even WebAssembly demo you could all play around with. Thank you for listening. Do you have questions?
Thanks, Artur.
I hope you like it. But,
yeah, I did. So, any questions from the audience? The girl behind.
Yeah.
I have a question. Where does the data come from? Because can you, there's generated text, for example, can you get a file with inappropriate words like?
So no, it's like it's stored.
Let me repeat the question for you. So the question is, where does the content of the file come from in record? Can you, and if it contains inappropriate words?
Yeah. So it comes from the Faker package, and the Faker package, it has its own sources, so it's all static. I haven't seen any inappropriate words so far, but you could also, what you could do if you want to generate it from your own, let's say, list of words, you could do that. It's possible. Yep. Yep. Question there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Let's say I want to use this.
Yeah.
Would you recommend me to generate a bunch of fake files on my own machine, push those to the repository, use those at a time, or regenerate files every time I run my test?
So the question is, do you want to store files still generated with this library, or do you want to generate them on the fly? And it's a matter of preference, but I would advise to generate it on the fly, because what I like about it is that it's very specific. It lives just in your case, and you know what it's doing. And when you start to push files to repository, as I said, you need to document it, because like tomorrow, like someone else comes and he says, I want to use this file as well, and you make some modifications to it. And then your test failed because you expected just that data. And when you do it on the fly, you just simplify that. You don't need to document. You can provide the content, and yeah. It's certainly my preference to generate on the fly. Yeah. Another question? Yes. Yeah, please. I don't see any other hands. Yeah.
No.
I saw that the files were saved by default in like the temp folder.
Yes.
Like you also have like saving S3.
Yeah.
And then how do you clean those files up? Like is that managed by the library?
It's not managed. You have to do it yourself.
Sorry, just to repeat the question
Yeah,
for the
sorry.
audience later on to hear. So the question was when the files are generated in a certain directory or even in a tree directory. So the question was how to clean those files while after they're generated.
So yeah, you need to clean it up yourself. And the reason why it was done is done in temp by default because temp is cleaned anyway. But if you do it in S3, just like the use cases are too specific, you have to do it in your tear down. There is one question there. Yeah.
Is it possible to use something like temp.dir or temp path to give the generator temp path, say store it there because that will delete?
Yeah, sure. So the question is, it's possible to use temp.dir or temp path. So it is using, sure. That's why the storage is, and the example I showed about with Django that you provide, just you give it a Django settings media root, exactly the same way. You just give it whatever directory you want to give. Yeah, question here.
So I was wondering if you have been thinking about adding fuzzing for Faker. So now it's generating relatively straightforward words and stuff like that. But I can imagine with testing, you want to get the edge cases as well. So get like some kind of fuzzing lists and stuff like that in there. So you can actually test if people enter random characters in their names or commas, semicolons, stuff like that. Have you thought about that for maybe improving the testing process?
But could you be more specific, like how it is related to exactly files?
If you're using your library to
Yeah.
test to create codes and then test your own code with,
Yeah.
wouldn't it make sense to add some type of content that sometimes isn't escaped properly in certain programs, like semicolons or
Yeah.
commas or things
Yeah,
like big
yeah.
programs, and embed that into some of the documents or zip files or whatever you're making.
Oh yeah, certainly. So the question is it possible actually to not to generate text which are bad,
Yes.
badly formatted? So of course it's possible. So I showed you an example. When I just made this nice template with like hello, first name, last name, and so whatever is there is free text, just extended with some dynamic fixtures, and you could create such template with whatever weird characters you have. It's just there. Yeah.
Maybe I have one question because
Yes.
I'm used to test with fixtures, so I know what the text input is and how to test what the output is. But you're generating files with random text, so how can you use that in a test as a fixture?
So yeah, again, you could also, if you have predefined text, so fixed text that you want to test with, again, you use this content argument to provide your text that you want to use, the fixture that you wanted to use, the text fixture. And so whenever you, let's say, whenever you generate the file, that file object that is created, it also contains metadata. So if you go to that metadata, which is like data and then content, that's the content of the file, text content of the file that you just generated. So if you if you triggered your pipeline, your ETL pipeline, so that document was picked and like it was ran through the OCR and like indexed, for instance, in some search system, you still have this original text that you used to create that file. And this is how you can compare the inputs and outputs.
Last one, but
Okay.
quick one, hopefully.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to integrate your file generation system with a property-based
property-based testing library like Hypothesis?
Let me. So the question if it's possible to integrate this library with Hypothesis for property-based testing. I'm sure it is.
Let's figure it out.
Yeah. Make a pull make a feature request and just explain what you need. I will take it out from there.
Thanks,
Oh yeah,
Artur.
thanks. It's, by the way, it's MIT licensed as much as possible. So do what you want.
A little present from us.
Thank you.